You're watching The World with me, Charles Aniagolu. Now, on Saturday, tomorrow, voters in Gabon will head to the polls to elect the country's new president. The election officially marks the end of the transition to civilian rule since the coup against former President Ali Bongo back in August of 2023. 8 candidates, including the leader of the military junta, Brice Oligui Nguema, are vying for the country's top job. For many people, the polls mark the start of a fresh era for the oil-rich African nation after more than 5 decades of the Bongo family dynasty.
Democracy will no longer be a distant promise, but a living reality. In the Fifth Republic, decentralization and the free administration of local authorities will be a reality. In the Fifth Republic, governance will be efficient and corruption will have no place. The Emerald City is here. The Eye of the Builder is here. 16 administrative buildings that will house our country's ministries. We're moving away from dependence on renting, and that's where we're going. 30 billion in savings that we're going to bring into our country. Our H Tower is starting to emerge from the ground. No need to go to Dubai. We'll be taking our selfies in the 52-story H Tower. You called me. You believed in me. And because of your calls, I gave up my military uniform, my profession of the heart, to serve you with honor and abdication, because I am a patriot.
And that's General Brice Oligui Nguema, the man who carried out the coup against Ali Bongo and has now taken off his military uniform and is hoping to be the next president. Well, Professor Tunde Esan is an African affairs analyst. He's also a professor of international relations with a focus on the history of African elections and democratic developments on the continent and beyond. He's been following events in Gabon from here in Abuja, and he joins me now in the studio. Good to see you again. Thank you very much for coming.
Charles.
So after more than 50 years of rule by one family, Gabon is set for a new era. Just remind us of how we got here. It follows a coup in 2023, doesn't it?
Yes. In 2023, there was a coup when Ali Bongo wanted to hold a new election. Remember that, let's even have a brief, on Gabon, you understand? The father came into power in 1967, you understand? That is the senior Bongo. Then he was there for 42 years. Succeeded by his son in 2009. Then in 2023, he was about running for the third time, or fourth time as it were. And there was a coup in June that year, in August last year, in December that year, because he won the election, and of course, a lot of riots, resistance, and the opposition actually they were on the streets all through. So the outcome of it was a military putsch headed by Brice Nguema that launched him into power in 2023, December 2023 as it were. So here we are, turning around, putting on civilian suits and uniform and dresses, running for the president of Gabon.
So this election officially marks, as you said, the end of the transition to civilian rule, which started in 2023.
2023, yeah.
I understand there are 8 candidates vying for the top job, of course, including the military ruler, Brice Nguema, that you mentioned. No guesses who the favorite to win is. I understand his election posters are everywhere in Gabon.
Yes. Brice is likely going to win the election for one reason. He's the one that that led the coup. He was the Republican guy,
he's the one who's organized the election,
and he's the one organizing the election. And the resentment and the long rule of the Bongo family actually has been a sort of advantage for him. People saying, look, he led the change. Let him continue with it, as it were. Of course, you have a very strong opposition, as it were, by, you understand, Nze, who was the prime minister when Ali Bongo was was the president. So people were seeing him as part of the old guard, as it were. So the chances are that the man who is in charge may eventually succeed.
Well, let me take you up on that, because I understand that most of the political elite have all at one point belonged to the Gabonese Democratic Party. And some argue that from this perspective, there'll be no renewal at the top given this past. I mean, how much does that complicate the process of change?
Whatever way you look at it, you know, dramatic change in Africa has not been that easy, as it were, because there's a thin line between the left and the right, you understand? No difference in the ideological leaning of most political actors, as it were. So what we're talking about is the ability and the vision of each and every one, I mean, each of the candidates, as it were. But looking at it as it were, just like you are saying, people might say, okay, there will be no dramatic change, but there might be changes as it were. Yeah, you know, when you look at the history of Ghana, it's a very small population, 2.3 million people, and a very prosperous country, as it were. So
So is this election likely to mark, I mean, I know you've kind of answered it, but in a different way, because you've got this military ruler who's run the country. Is it likely to mark a fresh era then? Is a new page going to be turned? Or there is nothing hopeful? And I'm thinking in terms of the ordinary people, long-suffering ordinary people of Gabon.
Let me say this.
I mean, has he done anything that will
let me say this about Brice Nguema. Between 2023 and now, he has tried to do a lot of things, particularly in the economic sector. I was just reading it, how he provided fund and massive, you know, economic reforms, as it were, in key areas of the economy, transportation, even in the oil sector, and still maintaining a very good relationship with France, which happens to be their colonial master. So we should not necessarily dismiss the fact that, look, there might be changes. There will definitely be changes. But my fear basically is that I hope Brice will not end up like the Bongos.
So just tell us a little bit more. I mean, you touched on a little bit of it earlier, but tell us a bit more about the country Gabon. I mean, it is a tiny country that is rich in oil reserves, isn't it?
Let me tell you about Gabon. Gabon has a landmass of about 270,000 square kilometers, you understand, and only 2.3 million people. In other words, in Africa, it has about the lowest number of people per square kilometers. And the GDP is about 20 billion, as it were, nominal GDP. And you know, when it comes to per capita income, it's 9,000, you know, number 4. After South Africa, Mauritius, and Seychelles. So Gabon holds a lot of promise, more than most countries in Africa. And even in the world, when you discover that you have only 2.3, maximum of 2.4, 2.3 as our 2023, you know, in occupying 270,000 square kilometers. Nigeria's minimum of about 200 million people, occupying 950,000 square kilometers, less than a million. And you now have 2.3 million people, and of course rich in carbon, understand, and gas, as it were, and of course endless, you know, opportunities when it comes to forestation and all that, you know, and of course export of key commodities, you know, not to talk of other minerals, as it were.
So in that regard, what it has been missing has been proper distribution of wealth, and the fact that obviously you had one family running it for a very long time.
For a very long time.
Now that appears to be about to, well, that has actually changed, but now that they're about to return to civilian rule, does the future look uncertain or more certain now?
Transition from one government to the other, initially there will be changes. There will be improvements, there will be reforms. Everybody that comes in wants to impress the populace, as it were. But whether the future is bright, nobody can say. Whether it is the other way around, nobody can say. But one thing is sure, the transition and the evolution of politics and development in Gabon is in place. and we are witnessing it.
Right.
And particularly when you realize that between 1960, people don't know that we got independence. In fact, they got independence August 17th, 1960, and Nigeria got independence October 1st, 1960. And now, almost 5 years, as it were, Gabon has been the way it is. So let's hope and pray there will be changes.
Okay. On that note, thank you very much indeed. Professor Tunde Esan is an African affairs analyst. He's a professor of international relations with a focus on the history of African elections and democratic developments on the continent and beyond. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Charles.